And this morning, I'd like to share with you one of my favorite stories, and it's directly from the African American tradition. It's a story by Virginia Hamilton, and it's called The People Could Fly. And even though it comes from an African American tradition, it's a story that relates to everyone, because everyone at some time in their lives are enslaved or in bondage by something in life. And I have to tell you, 2009 has been a rough year for a lot of people. A lot of challenges. People are worried about their jobs and about their future. And this story, The People Could Fly, talks about people having challenges. It talks about people using their imaginations to set them free. And that's something that all of us can identify with. Some glad morning, things will soon be brighter when I fly away to a place that's bursting with hope. I'll fly away. Oh yes, they say. They say. Oh yes. The people could fly. That long ago in Africa, some of them knew magic. Say they could walk up on the air as if they were climbing up on a gate. Say they flew like blackbirds, their black shiny wings just a-flapping in the air. How about that? Oh, but then they were captured for slavery and they shed their wings. Well, it was just too crowded, don't you know? And they all but forgot about flying when they could no longer breathe the sweet, sweet scent of Africa. But even though they shed their wings, they never lost their ability to fly in the land of slavery. And you know, you couldn't tell those who could fly from those who couldn't, because you see, they all had dark skin. Now there was one who once had wings. He was an old man, and they called him Toby. And then there was another one who once had wings. They called her Sarah. Now Sarah was a young woman. She was tall, but she was very much afraid. And she worked with a babe tied to her back. Now they were all slaves, and they worked hard in the fields. They worked from sunup to sundown. Now, the one who owned the slaves, well, they call him Master. A master. He was hard as a rock pile, hard as a lump of clay, hard as glinty coal. Master was a rock pile that would not be moved. And then there was the overseer. Now the overseer, he would ride his horse through the fields looking for slaves that he felt weren't working hard or very fast. And he'd point at them And when he pointed, there was a driver. He was the one with the whip. And he would come along and he would crack his whip across the bodies of the slaves whom he felt weren't working very hard, very fast. Well, one day in the fields, it was truly hot. And there they all were, chopping and hoeing. Well, the babe on Sarah's back felt the heat. It's just too hot. The babe started whimpering. It was low, but the whimpering began to grow because not only was the babe hot, it was hungry. Well, Sarah dared not stop to soothe it or comfort it. She dared not stop to feed it. She just hoped that it would be quiet. But then the whimpering became low cries, louder and louder, and all of a sudden that baby was bawling. And there was the overseer pointing at Sarah. And here comes the driver, and he cracked that whip across the body of that babe, and it screamed in pain. The blow knocked Sarah to the ground. But then there was old Toby there at her side, and she looked at him and she said, "Soon. I've got to go soon." And he said to her, "Soon." Well, that babe was still a-wailing on her back. And the driver was annoyed. And he said to her, "Keep that thing quiet." But it still wailed. And then the driver took his whip across the body of Sarah. The whip shredded her sack dress. And then it wrapped its way around her legs, causing sliced open cuts of pain, and the blood ran down and mingled with the dirt. And she looked at old Toby and she said, "Now, Father, do it now, before it's too late. We don't have time to wait." And he looked at his daughter and he said, "Yes, yes, the time has come. And you go as you know how to go." So Toby, he stood up. He stretched his hands out towards his daughter. And he whispered some ancient, magical African words. "Come, Kali, Tombe." And when he uttered those words, they went deep inside of Sarah. And she raised one foot up in the air. She raised another foot up in the air. She began to fly, clumsily at first, and she held that baby tight within her arms. And as she was struggling to remain in the air, she felt the African magic, the African mystery, and she rose, just as free as a bird, as light as a feather. She flew across the fields and the fences. Tall trees couldn't snare her. And the overseer was riding on horseback, trying to grab her, but he couldn't. She flew on until she flew from sight. All those on the ground who saw that, they dared not speak about it. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. But those that were there who saw knew that it was